Hello and welcome to the first lesson. In this lesson, we'll be focusing on building a class for the spaceship symbol that we'll be using in our game. The main concepts that we'll look at in this lesson are, first of all, basic class structure. Before you start writing code to get your class to do, well, anything, you first need to lay some basic groundwork. I will show you how to write basic class structure, and I will explain why you need the different parts of the structure. We'll also learn how to pull classes into your Flash file. Seeing as classes are written in a completely separate file, we need to flag that file as the one we want Flash to respond to. As it so turns out, there are many ways to do this. Along a similar line is importing Flash's classes into your own custom class. Now, this may sound like a bit of circular logic, but think about it. An AS file is essentially just a text file. So it doesn't really know ActionScript from third-rate poetry. In order to get the AS file to understand the ActionScript language, we need to import the parts of the language that we need into the class. Another essential thing we'll learn about is access modifiers. Access modifiers are written before variables and functions to restrict where you can call them from. Before we start into this lesson, I should really stick in a few disclaimers. First of all, I'm not going to be teaching how to draw the symbols we're going to use in this course. If you want to learn how to draw and animate in Flash so that you can create artwork for your own games, then there is a free 1-hour tutorial up on the Cartoon Smart website on how to draw in Flash, along with 2 lessons on the basics of Flash animation, along with many of the other courses up for sale. Second, I would like to remind you that this course is on object-oriented programming, not building games. Therefore, the way the game is built is designed to introduce you to object-oriented programming. It is not necessarily how you would build the game if you're just trying to build the game. So now that you understand that, let's start. First of all, what I want to have a look at is the Boulder Dodge lesson files here, and you can see that they are organized according to the parts. So we are in part 1 now, and you can see that this is the movie that you're watching right now. And we have 2 versions of our start and finish files, one for CS3 and one for CS4. If you're using a version of Flash that comes after CS4, then use the CS4 lesson files. We have the finish files here, which is where the game's going to be at by the end of this part, and we have the start files. And I recommend that you open up your start file and follow along with me in your Flash document, and you'll learn more for doing so. Now I'm going to quickly show you the artwork for this file that we're going to be using most often. And I'm not going to show you how to build it, but I am just going to briefly explain it. First of all, I've got a star field in the background here that I built using Photoshop, and it's got one of those newfangled motion twins applied to it so that I could use the motion path feature, which is very nice. And the only difference between the Flash CS3 version and the Flash CS4 version of these lesson files is that the Flash CS3 version will have all keyframes here instead of this new motion twin. Also, for our background, I have this nice nebula looking thing, and that's come about because I drew this little slur of paint over here. I drew this using a program called ArtRage, which is a cute little painting program, and I've just stuck a blur filter on that, and I've turned down the alpha so that you can see through it. See, there's the blur filter right there. Other than the background, the thing we're probably going to be seeing the most of is this spaceship here, and I'm looking at this in Flash CS3 because if I looked at it in Flash CS4, well, Flash CS4 would start to run very slowly because it tries to give you a preview of your movie clip, and which is nice, but it also slows it down, as I said. And it slows down because it's trying to preview this little flame symbol. So if you want to have a look through this spaceship symbol in Flash CS4, what I'd recommend you do is cut it off using Control X on the Windows machines or Command X on the Mac. And once you're done, make sure that you paste it back together, and you need to paste it in place by using Control Shift V or Command Option V? Command Shift V. Yeah, I think you've got Shift on the Macintosh as well. I don't have a Macintosh, so sorry. You are on the downside of this one. But anyway, this flame comes to you from the Flash Fire tutorial. It's an animation tutorial, and I just nicked it off that because I was too lazy to build one on my own. Sorry, Justin. And the only different thing I did was I used the flame symbol as a mask to this little gradient animation I've got here, which gives it a nice little effect, I think. And also note that this spaceship has a death state right here, and this explosion comes to you from another Cartoon Smart lesson, but I actually made this one following along from the lesson, so I'm not technically, infringing copyright. And this comes from the Flash Effects tutorial, I believe it's called, and it's very cool. I think this is one of my favorite effects out of all of it. And also some of the symbols from within the spaceship as well, its body, have death states as well that play along when we get to this particular frame. So when we have one of our boulders crash into the spaceship, I'm going to get it to play this animation. Also, we have here the shield, and I think the shield is one of my favorites, actually. Oh, double-clicked outside. The shield is one of my favorites. Gonna unlock the layer so that I can go within it. And the way I made the shield is that I made a blue circle, turned it into a movie clip symbol so that I could stick a glow filter on top of it. And in the glow filter settings, there's a knockout tick box. And the knockout tick box gets rid of the actual artwork inside the symbol and leaves just the filter remaining. And seeing as this has got an inner glow as opposed to an outer glow, you can see straight through the shield and see the spaceship. And I've also got a nice sort of breathing animation that goes along with it here by just changing the blur settings on that filter. Also in here I've got a little shape tween in a symbol that just goes across the shield like that, and it's being masked out by the same type of symbol that the shield is, but it's not using the knockout filter. And that is got a blend mode applied to it here. If I can select it, and over here in the properties you can see that there's a little box here with a drop down for different types of blend modes. And what this blend mode does is it makes everything underneath it brighter, and so that gives it a nice little electric effect. So those are our symbols, and now what I want to do is start off with telling you this. Turn off strict mode. Go under your profile here, go to edit, and under Actionscript 3 settings, go here, and you see this little tick box here for this thing called strict mode. I want you to turn it off. Strict mode is what I like to call an error causer for no particular good reason at all. Well, let's just say if you leave it on, you get a slight increase in performance. Your Flash file will run faster if you're having problems with it running too slowly, but we're not going to have a problem with this, so this is going to just be a pain if we leave it on. So be gone with your strict mode, and I'll press OK, and I'll exit out of that, and make sure you do the same on your end as well. What we're going to do now is set up linkage. And if you've been coding in Actionscript a while, then you'll know what I mean by linkage. But for the new ones, I'm going to give you an explanation, and for those of you who are watching this course to actually learn something about object-oriented programming, then I suggest you watch this bit as well. Linkage is a thing for symbols, and symbols are held in the library panel here. Symbols contain the artwork for our lesson, such as this logo. You see how I got a faded logo out here on the stage? Well, I can pull out a new logo from the library, and this is the exact same symbol. And I'm going to delete that off. So I can use my mouse to manually pull something out of the library and put it on the stage. But what I can also do is use Actionscript to pull something out of the library and put it on the stage. And if I do that, I actually have a little bit more control over it. So what we need to do is give this symbol here a unique name so that we can reference it in Actionscript to pull it out. So I'm going to select my spaceship symbol here, as this is the main symbol. This is where all the wonderful stuff is going to be going on. I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to go to properties. And I'm going to make sure that I've got the advanced view of my symbol properties box as opposed to the basic view that I've got here. Click advanced so that we can see more of it. And I'm going to tick this box here. Export for Actionscript, and export in the first frame. And where we want to put this special name is in this text box here, class, and it's already given it the same name as it is in the library, and that's going to be fine. Now, if you've watched the introduction, and if you haven't watched the introduction, go back and watch the introduction, you'll remember that I talked for quite a few minutes on what classes are. So if I put in a name into this class text box here, does that mean that Flash is automatically going to create a new class for me? Well, yes and no. I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to get this ActionScript class warning, which says a definition for the class could not be found in the class path. So what this whole thing means is that Flash has looked in the same directory as our Flash file, and it's tried to find an ActionScript file that has the name Spaceship, and inside that ActionScript file has a class called Spaceship as well, and it can't find one, which is good because it doesn't exist. If it could find it, that would be scary. So what it says it's going to do is going to create a workaround so that you can use this name to pull out the symbol out of the library using ActionScript, and you don't need to worry about making a whole new class out of it, which is good because sometimes you just want to pull a symbol out of the library and you don't want to go to the trouble of building a class for it. But for us, we are going to create an ActionScript file with the name Spaceship. We are going to create a class in it with the name Spaceship as well. So this means it's going to automatically set up a relationship between that ActionScript file and this symbol. So to do that, I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to go up to File, New, and I'm going to choose a new ActionScript file. And I'm going to click OK, and it creates just a blank text file. Immediately, I'm going to save it. You need to save always. And I'm going to put it in the same directory as my Flash file. And I'm going to call this Spaceship with a capital S for space and a capital S for ship, which is the same name as the linkage. And press save. Now we can get to writing some ActionScript. Remember how I said that classes are like toolboxes? Well, classes are also like houses. And before you can build a house to make it comfortable, put furniture in it, you need to establish a foundation for it. The same with classes. Before you can write anything in a class to make it useful, to make it do anything, you first need to establish a foundation for it. The first line that we need to type out to establish our foundation is this thing called package. That should turn red if you're using the same color settings as me. By the way, if you want to use the same color settings as me, you can go up to preferences and see how I've got these different colors set up here. You may see this turn blue or something, which is very, very boring. So you can sample. You can use the eyedropper tool and put it over the QuickTime movie and sample this if you want. Also, I'm using a different font. I'm using a Verdana font and giving it a bigger font size so that you can read it easier. I'm just that sort of nice person. Anyway, with package. Package is like the already established terrain, if we're still going with my house metaphor, because package refers to the file or folder that the ActionScript file is stored in. So what I'm going to do is give it some opening brackets and some closing brackets, and this is going to be like a big candy wrapper for the rest of our class. This is the first open bracket here, and this is the last bracket here. The next line is this, public class. This tells ActionScript that the following, what's going to come in the soon to arrive open and close brackets, you should treat as a class. This public thing here is what's called an access modifier, and I'll get to what that means in a second. But now we need to give this class a name, and I'm going to call it Spaceship, which is the same name as our file name, which is the same name as the linkage. The next two lines are the literal concrete block that we're going to build everything else on top of. This is extends movie clip, open brackets and close brackets. Now, here's a little bit of what's going on with these two words here. The movie clip class is very useful because the movie clip class already has such things as X and Y coordinates, which means that we can set up the location of any movie clip on the stage by giving it horizontal and vertical coordinates, which are called X and Y. But if we didn't use this, if we didn't have extends movie clip here, we would need to program in X and Y coordinates by ourselves. But if we use extends movie clip, because the movie clip class has X and Y coordinates and alpha and such things as that, now our class has X and Y coordinates that we can set up, and without any extra work. So is it a slack off? Yeah. Is it useful? Yeah. Does Adobe do it? Yeah. And if Adobe does it, then you can do it. That's a good rule of thumb to go by. Now I want to be able to see whether this code is working, to see whether we've set up our class correctly or not. And the only way to be able to do this is we need to pull this spaceship symbol that this class is attached to out of the library and put it on the stage. So to do that, I'm going to go to our Boulder Dodge start file, or of course you may call it by a different name. That's probably a good idea. It's no longer a start file really. And I'm going to go up to my actions layer, and you can see here there's a little frame with a lowercase a on it, which tells us that there's ActionScript already on this frame. So I'm going to select it, then I'm going to go up to Windows, and I'm going to select my Actions palette, which brings up this. So the code that's already on here, I'll just stick it over here. The code that's already on this layer is just a stop action, which means that if this was going for multiple frames, I don't want you to show those frames at the moment. I just want you to stop, like you would for your DVD player. Now what we've got to do is pull this symbol out of the library and put it onto the stage. And think of it like this library is just a big factory that's producing all your symbols all the time. What we want to do is put in an order into the factory for a new spaceship. Wouldn't that be neat? And it's not going to cost us anything either. It's going to be free to the wind spaceships. So what I'm going to have to type out now is var, and I've got to give this a name, Spaceship. What var means is it's short for variable. A variable can be anything. It could be words, it could be a number, or in this case, it could be our spaceship symbol. So to tell Flash what this variable is going to be, this variable is going to have a name of spaceship to start with. So whenever we want to say, do something to that spaceship, we're going to use this name. And I'm going to put in a colon, and I'm going to type out that linkage name, which is the same name as the file name, which is the same name as the class, which is spaceship as well, but with a capital S. That means it's going to be different. And I'll just collapse this to give me more room. This particular practice right here, where I've just set up what type of thing this variable is going to hold, is commonly known as data typing. So you're probably going to hear a lot of people, including me, refer to this practice as data typing heretofore. This is great. We've got a variable and we know what the variable is going to hold, but it doesn't hold anything at the moment. So we need to say, we want a new spaceship to be assigned to this spaceship variable. So we're going to set it equal to, use our equal to sign, new spaceship. Open and close normal brackets as opposed to curly brackets, and then a semicolon to finish off the line. Flash just loves brackets and semicolons, don't you know? Now, we've put in an order for this spaceship to our library, but now to deliver it, we need to go down a few lines and type out add child spaceship. This means it's going to be delivered and it's going to appear up in the top left-hand corner of the stage, which isn't very useful. So I want to move the spaceship to the center of the screen. To do that, I'm going to say spaceship.x. This refers to this variable or this symbol's horizontal location. And I'm going to set this equal to the stage's width. So I'm going to type out stage, and from the stage I can access this thing called stage width. Finger's not cooperating with me. So stage.stage width, and this will set it to 750. That's the exact width of this stage. But I don't want it to appear over onto the right. I want it to appear right in the center. So what I've got to do is divide this by 2. And I'm going to do the same for its vertical location, which is called the Y. So spaceship.y equals stage.stage height. Very important because this is wide. This is wider than it is tall. So if I set it to width, it wouldn't work. Stage.stage width, stage.stage height divide them both by 2, and then you're going to set your spaceship in the center. Now, don't be fooled. You can actually stick this before or after you add it to the stage or deliver it from the factory. So after we put it on this stage, it will first of all put it up in the 0, location or the top left, and then it would move it to the center. You wouldn't see this, of course, but that's what would happen. But if you set up its X and Y coordinates before you deliver it to the stage, you're saying when you deliver it, Flash, put it right into the center, then you cut out the middleman, and I think it's just a bit of a safer way to do it. Before I can test this, I've got to go to my spaceship class, and I've got to make sure I've saved it. You can see there that there's a little asterisk. And if you see an asterisk on something, that means that the file is not saved. And because this code is written externally, Flash is always going to pull in the saved version of the file because that's how the file exists. So to make sure that the saved version of the file is the latest version of the file, you're going to press Control S or Command S on the Mac. If you're limited to using the menu, you can just click Save right here. So now to see whether this whole movie has worked, I'm going to go to, where is it? Control Test Movie, or we can use this keyboard shortcut here, Command Enter on the Mac or Control Enter on the PC. I'm going to be using that. If you see just this SWF movie popping up by itself, that's because I pressed Control Enter on my PC, Command Enter on the Mac. Let's click this and see whether our class works. And celebration, it doesn't. Typical, huh? Right off the bat, our class does not work. Why is that? Remember how I said that an ActionScript file is nothing more than a text file? And this is literally true. I could go and find this file and change its .as extension to .txt, and I could open it up in Notepad, and I could close it down, change it back into a .as file, and open it back up in Flash, and it would be none the wiser. So this begs a question. How does a text file know how to control Flash? The answer? It doesn't. The only reason why this text file knows what this package and all this red stuff means is that Flash imports a part of its language into the class. It's called a top-level class is the thing that it imports, and that holds a package, public class, such things as that, and things as variables and variable data types. And that's how this text file knows what Flash is and how to code in Flash, but it doesn't import movie clips by itself. So that's something we need to do. To do that, we need to go in between the package and the class section, and we'd need to type out import Flash. So what we're importing is coming from the Flash library, .display. Display holds what's called display object classes. Display objects are anything you can see on the stage, such as bitmaps or buttons and movie clips. So import flash.display.movie clip. And I'll just press enter here so that I can get it from that little reference thing that came out, and a semicolon to close it off. So if I save my file using Control S or Command S on the Mac, and then press Control Enter or Command Enter on the Mac to publish the movie, you can see that it works, and there's a giant spaceship on my screen. Let me just scale that spaceship down a little bit. Let's go to our action script on the main timeline, and I want to set spaceship.scale X is how you change how wide it is. And I'm going to set it equal to 0.15, I believe. And I'll do the same for how high it is. Spaceship.scale Y, and I'll set scale Y equal to spaceship's scale X value. Just so that I'm sure that I'm keeping it all at the same aspect ratio and one's not going to be like a big spaghetti thing as opposed to the other. So let me just test that to see whether it's working nicely. Yeah, that's much better. So while I'm in the mood of importing things into our class, let me just import events from the Flash events. And there are a number of different types of events. Events is a family, like display is a family of display objects. Event is a family of events, like you have got mouse events, you got keyboard events, but I just want the regular type of events called event. The specific event I want is the enter frame event, which is held inside of this. And I'll tell you about what the enter frame event does in just a second. Now, some of you out there may be raring to go and thinking, yes, let's write some actual code in this public class statement to actually get our class to do something finally. And I'm going to say to you right now, hold your horses. You can't do that. You can't write this regular type code, the same type of code as we wrote here on our frame, inside this public class area. It's because Flash is a sensitive soul. It just couldn't take that. That would be too much. So where can we write that regular type code? Well, inside functions. For those of you who don't know what functions are like a group of code that we can call at specific times. So let's say we wanted something to happen when we clicked our mouse, we would have a function happen, and that would take the situation and do something spectacular, hopefully. But for those of you who know what functions are, you know that functions just don't call themselves. They don't decide,
I feel like executing now.
That doesn't happen, thankfully. So what does this mean? Does this mean that we can't have something happen immediately when we get this class added to the stage? Like when you write code on the timeline, it happens as soon as you publish your movie. Is there any way to have something happen as soon as you publish this class? Well, yes. We use a special type of function called a constructor function. And here's how we do that. First of all, we type out public. This is, again, that access modifier. I'll get to what that means in a second. Function. So what's going to come in the following brackets are going to be treated as a function. And now we need to give it a name. And we're going to call it Spaceship. This is what sets this function apart from all the others. It's because it's got the same name as the class, which has the same name as the file name, which has the same name as the linkage. No other function can have that special relationship. So this is why anything that's written inside this function is going to execute immediately. And of course, I need to do the function syntax. I just put in two normal brackets and then open curly brackets and closed curly brackets. Now, remember how we were talking about the foundation of the class and how the package is the already established foundation and the extends part is the concrete block. Think of functions as the scaffolding of the house because they hold together all the things that make a class a home, such as your wallpaper or your keyboard interaction or whatever. Now, to prove to you that what I'm telling you is the truth, that this function will call itself as soon as we add the spaceship to the stage, I'm going to get it to trace something. Trace is a little thing for us programmers. Anyone who's playing the game on the internet wouldn't see anything that we trace. It's just mainly for making sure that code works. And you see, I've added these little rabbit ears or quotation marks in here. And this is because I want to trace the word something. If I didn't have the rabbit ears around it, then Flash would try and find a variable or a function by the name of something, it would fail and it would throw an error, which is annoying. So I wrap it in these rabbit ears and Flash will treat this word as what's called a string, which is just words or a sentence. And also this trace function is imported into the class by itself, along with this public and this class and things like that. So we don't need to import it ourselves. Save and Control Command Enter to publish the movie. And if I'm right, yep, in the output panel, I'll see something. So there you go. I speak the truth. How could you ever have doubted me? Now we've come to the point where we need to talk about this word here, public. What is public and how has it found its way in front of our class and function? Well, public is what you call an access modifier. And every function and every variable we make in our class needs to have an access modifier in front of it. But what do? Well, I'm going to write out a few variables to illustrate this. I'm first of all going to get rid of this trace statement as we don't need it anymore. And you declare your variables in between the public class statement and your first function, in between this little wilderness waste zone where nothing lies except your declared variables. So first of all, I'm going to type out the access modifier, which is public, and then it's going to be a variable, so I'll type out var, and I'm going to give this variable a name of public var. Extremely original, but you know what I'm talking about at least. And this variable is going to store a sentence, so it needs to be equal to a string. So it's just going to be words, the same as what I traced just a little while ago in our constructor function. And I'm going to type in here, you called a public variable. Right next to it, I'm going to declare another variable, and I'm going to call this one a private variable instead. So it's a different type of access modifier. And I'm going to give it a name of private var, and this is going to be a sentence too, and you're probably going to guess what I'm going to type in here. You called a public, sorry, you called a private variable, and L doesn't work as good as semicolon there. So we have our two variables, and they've got different access modifiers. So to see what the difference between them is, I'm going to go out to my main timeline, and I'm going to go to my actions, and I'll just go to my actions frame here. And after we've added the spaceship to the stage, what I'm going to do is trace those variables. So I'm going to type out a trace statement, and I'm going to look inside the spaceship variable, which is the spaceship symbol, and I'm going to trace the value of the public variable, the public var. Save and press Control Command Enter to publish, and if this works, I should see the value of that variable out in the output window, and there it is. You called a public variable. So that's all fine and dandy. Now let's try the private variable. I'm going to go here and get rid of public, and I'm going to type out private. Save, enter. Well, it don't need to save that one, but anyway. But we get an error here, a reference error. It says property var not found in Spaceship. Property private var. Well, yeah, there's a private var in Spaceship. We know, we just declared it. Private var, it's the same name. Why can't it see it? Well, let's go and copy. Actually, we'll cut this trace statement off of the main timeline by pressing Control or Command X. And I'm going to go to my class, and inside this constructor function, I'm going to paste it back by Control or Command V. Get rid of this spaceship name here because we're already inside this class. We don't need to look inside it. That won't work. It'll cause another error. Save and press Control Command Enter and see whether it will trace it now. And yeah, no problem. You called a private variable. So yeah, it exists. The main timeline was wrong. Why couldn't it see the private variable? Well, think of access modifiers as different types of information. So you've read an article in the newspaper about some 8-year-old who won an Olympic gold medal. That information is public. Anyone who has that newspaper or has a connection to the internet can Google it and find out about that 8-year-old and why he's so special. But say you're embarrassed about something, like you've got ingrown toenails. That information is private. You're not going to let it go outside of you. You're the only one who knows about it. So the difference between public and private, as in access modifiers, is that this public variable you could access anywhere. It could be on the main timeline, it could be inside this class, or it could be a couple of movie clips down the hierarchy. You could still call this private variable and also this public function. Sorry, this public variable and this public function. But as for this private variable, you can only access it from within the same class because it's private. It's not going to go outside of the class no matter how hard you try to call it, to say please. It's still not going to go out. You're going to find that we're using private in front of a majority of our variables and functions because it's considered good practice to keep everything private and inside the class. But that's okay because if a variable or function is private, the likelihood is the main timeline or other movie clips aren't going to want to know about it anyway. Just the same as I don't want to know about your ingrown toenails. Bear in mind that there are a few different types of access modifiers along with public and private. we're not really going to get into those in this course. Well, we may get into one of them, but you'll be using public and private 99.9998% of the time anyway. But for now, let me just say this. We're done. At least with object-oriented programming theory about putting together classes and stuff. We've learned about access modifiers. We've learned about the basic structure here of this class and package and importing classes into your own class. This is all the basic theory, and we're done with learning theory for this lesson. It's all practical application and getting your class to do something cool from now on. So I've just got rid of those variables and that trace statement because it's not doing anything for us really. From now on, I want to do something to this spaceship. I wanted to get it to do something. And at the moment, you see how I've got this shield and this little flame out the end of it? I don't really want that to appear most of the time. I only want this shield to appear once asteroids hit it and it explodes and then it comes back. I want the shield to signify that you've got a short amount of time where you're invincible, that even if an asteroid collides with you, then you're not going to die. Wouldn't that be nice if it happened in real life? I'm sure astronauts would have a much safer time. Also, this booster, or this flame out the end, I only want to appear at certain times when you press a particular key. So in order to get rid of those, I've added some instance names to them in the symbol already. This shield is called Shield. It's got an instance name of Shield, and the flame at the end of it has got an instance name of Booster. So what I'm going to do is call those instance names from the constructor function. So shield.visible, which is a property of all movie clips and buttons, which when I set it equal to false, let me find my L key, means that I won't be able to see the shield anymore. But when I do want to see this shield, I can set the shield's visible factor to true and it will pop up again. I'm also going to set the flame equal to false, and it's got an instance name of booster. So booster.visible equals false as well. And if I save and publish and wait, the shield and the rocket at the end of it, it's no longer there. So mission accomplished. We now have a better looking spaceship, and it's aesthetically, that's all I want it to look like for now on. Okay, here's the plan. To get the ship to move and interact with the keyboard, we're going to set up an enter-frame event listener, and then every time the enter-frame function is run, we'll give the spaceship some velocity. Okay, some of the newer ones of you would just probably say, what are you talking about? What on earth is event listener and what on earth is enter frame? Well, let's have a look at what event listener is first off. Cast your brain back to the days when you were in school and you were in your last class and you were just waiting to hear that school bell ring. And as soon as it did, you would pick up your books and you would run home and you'll play video games. So during that period of your last class, you're just listening. You're waiting for the event of the bell to ring. The same in Flash. We have different types of events. Like if I clicked my mouse like this, then that just registered an event, and we could have an event listener waiting for our mouse to click on a particular button, and when it did, it would run a particular function. Now there is a particular type of event listener called enter frame. An enter frame event is triggered however many frames we have per second. See over here we've got FPS. Currently it's set to 30. We could have it set to 60 or whatever number you prefer. This means that this function is going to be called 30 times a second, and if our frames per second was 60, it would be called 60 frames a second. To set that up, I'm going to type out add event listener. Event listener. That's just how I remember how to spell it. I'm a terrible speller, unfortunately. And I'll put in some brackets to start off with, and to get that particular event listener, I'm going to type out event. You might remember that we imported the event class just, well, a while ago now. And then I'm going to put in a dot because, as you can see, there are many types of events in here. Like there's one for added to stage. And what we're looking for is one down here, this one, called enter frame. And I double click that and it will add it to our code. This is set up that we want a particular event. We want the enter frame type of event listener. Then I'm going to put in a comma. And now in this place, I write the name of my function that I want to be called whenever this event listener is triggered. And I'm going to call this one on enter frame. Just so that when I'm writing out the function and I'm looking through my code, I can see, oh, okay, that's definitely responding to an enter frame event listener. I'm going to call this a private function because I don't want anyone to access it outside of this class. And besides, I'm probably going to be using the same function name in other classes as well. If I used public for each of those functions, I'll probably get some naming errors and saying, oh, you've already got a function called on enter frame. You can't do that, dude. But if it's private, then you shouldn't have any problems with that. So I'm going to type out on enter frame. I could just double click this to select it, press Control C or Command C on the Mac to copy it, and press Control Command V to paste it in, and then I'm sure that I've got the same name here. Then in our function conventions, just like up here, we put in 2 regular brackets. And in here, I need to type out event, colon, and then capital E for event. So make sure that whatever on the right side of this colon is always the same as what's up here. So if this was a mouse event, if we type mouse event out here instead, then we would type mouse event here. If it was keyboard event here, then it would be keyboard event here. Seeing as it's event with a capital E here, it's event with a capital E there. If you don't understand why we need this, then in part 3 of this lesson, I'm going to be looking into detail on events, and I'll explain that to you. And it's actually quite interesting. Very interesting. So if that has been haunting you, why on earth do we need to put that in here to get our thing to work? Then relax. An answer is coming soon to a Cartoon Smart course near you. In between these curly brackets, we can put in some code, and whatever code we put in here is going to be called 30 times a second. So if I just put in a trace statement here, just like when we're testing and all this other stuff, and I just put in something again, and if I save and press Control or Command Enter on the Mac, you can see that over here we've got many times something called. So 30 times a second, we're getting something put in our output window. Fantastic. I'll get rid of that because we don't really need it. So now that we've got our enter frame function set up, I'm going to be adding 3 new variables that we're going to use in our enter frame function to move our spaceship around. These are all going to be private variables. So I'm just going to write out private var, and I'm going to copy and paste it so that we've got 3 private variables. And I'm going to give the first one the name of Vx. Vx stands for velocity x, which is velocity on the horizontal axis. And this is going to be holding a number value. So I'm going to set it semicolon and number in, then set it equal to 0. Next one is going to be called Vy, which stands for velocity on the y-axis, which is vertically. So that's going to also be a number, and it's also going to equal 0. The last one is going to be called Vr, and that's also going to be a number, and it's equal to 0 as well. But Vr is going to stand for velocity rotation. Instead of actual directions, up and down, left and right, this is going to be how many degrees this spaceship is facing. We'll get to velocity r later, but for the moment, let's just set up some interactivity with Vx and Vy. So first of all, what I'm going to do is set Vx equal to 2. Then I'm also going to access a property called this.x. This refers to the spaceship symbol that this class is controlling, and x refers to its horizontal direction. So I'm going to set this.x equal to this.x, so it's still going to have the same value as it already has, but now I'm going to add on top of it Vx. So if I save and publish, Little problem there. I need to put the semicolon in instead of a little quotation mark, which marked the whole thing up. Sorry about that. So you can see that the spaceship moves gradually over to the right until it goes off screen. And if I add it in the vy variable and set that equal to 2 as well, and go to the next line, that this dot y equals this dot y plus vy. Save, publish, then you should see it move down to the bottom right, which it does, no problem. So every frame, we're adding a value of 2 to this dot x. So this means that every frame, the spaceship will move 2 pixels to the right and 2 pixels down. This is all fine and dandy, and we can call our parents and say, look mum, no hands. But really in an ideal world, we want it to actually react to our hands. We want to say, look mum, hands, and press down on our keyboard and have the spaceship move down, and press up on our keyboard and have the spaceship move up. It's fantastic on its own, but it's not terribly interactive. So what we need to do is listen at a new event listener for whenever we press a key down on our keyboard. I'm going to type out stage.add event listener. We need to add this event listener to something. Stage is usually the best for adding keyboard events to, as opposed to our enter frame event, which just can be added to nothing. It just can stand on its own. We actually need to add this keyboard event to something for complicated reasons, which I don't feel like going into, but just keep a note of it and you'll be fine. This is going to be a keyboard event, and it's going to be key down. So whenever we press a key down, we're going to have the following function execute, and I'm going to call this function on key down. Underneath it, I'll type out a new private function. The function's name is on key down, and I'll put in my little normal braces. What do I need to put in here? Event, and then whatever is put here goes on the other side of that little colon. So this is going to be a keyboard event. Then I'll put in open curly braces and then close curly braces. Now let's just test to see whether this is actually all working. So I'll type out trace and something. Getting bored of the same word, are you? Something. And just as a warning, this is going to cause an error right off the bat. Can you look at this code and work out why? Well, first of all, let's save and publish. Press Control or Command Enter, and you can see up in the code up here it says type was not found, private function on key down. That's because of this keyboard event. It's tossing up, it's saying this is wrong, but what it's actually talking about is this. Errors are a strange creature like that. You see, what we did up here is we imported the event class so that we could use enterFrame, and that's perfectly fine. The enterFrame function works wonderfully. But what doesn't work so wonderfully is this keyboard event, because we haven't imported it. To rectify this, what we're going to do is copy flash.events.event, and I'm going to press enter, and in here I'm going to type in front of event keyboard. So now we're importing the keyboard event, and it should work perfectly. And by the way, I'll just get rid of this where we set the value for Vx and Vy, because we're going to be using the on key down event to do that in a second. But now let's just see whether our code works. We'll just press Control Command Enter to see whether it does. And sure enough, it doesn't. Well, didn't we sort that out? Didn't we import it? Well, yes, we did. This is a different type of error. Well, get them straight, why don't you? See, what's going on here is that sometimes code in a class can be compiled so quickly that over here in the main timeline, we actually, well, it's just lagging because I've got this spaceship symbol selected in the library. If you're getting that problem, just select different symbol and it should go quicker. You see over here, sometimes the code in our class is executed so quickly that we actually haven't had a chance to add the spaceship to the stage yet. Subsequently, when we're saying add this event listener to the stage class, the class goes, what stage? Because it hasn't been added to it. It was like, who's your daddy? And the kid's not even been born yet. The way to get around this is we're going to type out a completely new function. It's going to be a private function, and I'm going to call it init. Init stands for just initiate, a shortened form of that, and regular brackets and curly brackets. And I'm going to cut all this code here out of this constructor function, and I'm going to put it inside initiate function. And inside the constructor function, I'm going to put in an event listener. Keyboard not obey me today. Event listener. And this is going to be an event type of event, the same type as the enter frame, but it's going to be added to stage instead of the enter frame. This is going to trigger the initiate function when we are sure that the symbol has actually been added to the stage and our class knows what the stage is. So don't forget, in your little regular brackets you need to type out event as well. And if we save and publish, then everything seems hunky-dory. And if we press a key down, like I'm going to press 4, we trace something. So if I just randomly type things. Oh, by the way, you may get a problem where if you like press B, nothing actually happens. It doesn't trigger anything. That's because it's still using keyboard shortcuts from Flash, which is very annoying. To turn that off, you go to Control, Disable Keyboard Shortcuts, and now if I press B, it goes to the program rather than to Flash. Just a little thing you may need to keep in mind there. Now our game will interact with our keyboard, so that if we press space, it will trace something, and if we press right on our arrow keys, it will do something as well. But it does the same thing. We want it to do different things. Like if we press the right arrow key, we want the spaceship to move to the right. And if we press the left arrow key, we want the spaceship to move to the left. At the moment, if we press the right arrow key, we'll trace something. And if we press the left arrow key, we'll trace something again. How do we get this on key down function, which calls every time we press a key down, to respond to specific keys? Well, it turns out that this event actually records which key happened to be pressed down that triggered this event. We can access this by typing out event. This is going to be whatever the same name as we put up here. In fact, I could just give this any name, like I could call this Ugalahu, and I could go Ugalahu dot key code, and it'll trace that. I'll press Control or Command Enter to publish it, and when I press space, you can see it pops up here, 32. That refers to our spacebar, and if I press right, 39 pops up. Up, down, left, right. All these return numbers. That's because each of the buttons on your keyboard have specific numbers applied to them called key codes. So what we can do is we can put in some if statements. And I'm just going to turn this back to event, by the way, and that to event because it just makes more sense. So what we could do is we could type out an if statement, and we put in just some brackets and some curly braces. The idea behind an if statement is that whatever's in between these regular brackets, if it's true, say if event dot key code equals 40, then whatever's in between these curly braces will happen, whereas if it's not, then it will just skip to whatever's next in the code. So if I just type trace and I can't bother with trying to type out a real word. So if this is true, then it will do what's next. So if I type, if I press Control Enter, and something's gone wrong. Assignment condition, yes. The problem with this is that you just can't type in equals. If you're trying to see whether something equals another thing, you need to type out 2 equal signs. Publish. And then if I press down on my key, because that's got the same key code as 40, it'll trace that out. But if I press left or right, I'm not going to trace it. But if I press down again, it traces it again. So that's the idea behind an if statement. Now, that's great, but to add interactivity for each of our keys, each of our arrow keys, along with the space bar, will take a whole lot of if statements, and it would be very hard to understand that particular type of code. So assuming that you've already been using if statements for a while and you watched the ActionScript Basics tutorial on Cartoon Smart, then you'll be very familiar with if statements. What we're going to do is use an if statement Mark II, the second version of if statement, which is called a switch case statement, which it doesn't completely replace if else statements or just if statements. It's used for specialized situations where you're just dealing with whether something is equal to another thing. Think of it like this. You get up in the morning and you decide that you're going to cook yourself breakfast. But you know that you've only got a limited amount of eggs available to you. So depending on how many eggs you have, you'll cook yourself a different breakfast. So if you've got 3 eggs, you'll bake yourself a cake. Lucky you. And if you have 2 eggs, you'll cook French toast. And if you've got 1 egg, you'll boil an egg. And if you've got no eggs, you'll starve. This is how you would write that out in ActionScript using a switch case statement. First of all, you'll type out switch. And then we have just 2 regular brackets here. And then some curly braces. First of all, what we put in here is the variable that we want to check to see whether it's equal to certain things. In our case, that would be egg. I know I haven't declared an egg variable up here. I'm just using this for the sake of demonstration. You don't have to follow along with me here. Switch egg. Then we'll type out case 3. What we're saying is if our egg variable equals 3, therefore if we've got 3 eggs, then we'll do this. Bake cake. So we'll call a bake cake function. Then to end that off, we'll type out break. Whereas if in the case we've got 2 eggs, then we'll call a French toast function, as opposed to baking a cake. Then if we've only got 1, in the case we've only got 1, then in here we'll type out a boil egg function. And then lastly, in the case that we have no eggs, then starve function. So there's a bit of realistic code, just in case your brain's programmed in ActionScript 3.0, there's how you would program your daily meal. But we're only accounting for 4 cases if we've got 3 eggs, 2 eggs, 1 egg, or 0 eggs. What if we have 77 eggs or 183 eggs? What happens then? Well, we could type out case 77, case 183, but you can't really account for every case because numbers are infinite. So what we do to account for every other case is we type out default, spell it correctly, that's very important, default colon break. And we could put in between here a different function or something, whatever, like feast, a feast function inside here. That's basically what a switch case statement does. In our case, what we want to do is check the event.keycode and see if it equals each of those key code to see whether it's left or right, up or down. But you know what? It's pretty hard to remember those key codes. That down is 40 and all the other ones. I don't remember those. There's an easy way to do that. We can type out keyboard dot, and then you can see we've got all these different keys appearing right here. And if I type down, then we can say in the case of keyboard down, then we'll do this. We'll set, what is it, Vx equal to 1. And if I get rid of all these other ones here, then what we could do is test this out, and we'll see that when we press, oh wait, Vy, we want Vy because it moves vertically. When we test, we'll have an interactivity where the spaceship will move down when we press our down keyboard. So if I press save and then Control Command Enter, then I press down, then we get an error. That's because it doesn't know what keyboard is. We need to import this keyboard class. And right about now, you're probably getting sick of it and saying, how on earth am I supposed to know how to import this in? Because it's just random. This could be, it's display for movie clips, it's event for events. How am I supposed to know what keyboard comes under? Well, calm down. Here's how you do it. Double click over keyboard to highlight it and then press F1. All that will do is look up in the help docs for Flash, for Actionscript, and it will look up the keyboard class. And over here we can see up the top we've got a package, flash.ui. So if I go back here and if I go up the top and type out import flash.ui.keyboard, save and publish, and then if I press down, the spaceship all of a sudden starts to move down. So successfully, we've added interactivity with our keyboard using a switch case statement, and you've also learnt how to find out how to import a particular class into your project. That is just by highlighting it and pressing F1 and looking it up in the help docs under this little package part here. So now that we've accounted for our key down, when we press the down on the keyboard, let's do some more things for if we press like key up. So we'll go keyboard dot up, semicolon, break. Darn, that wasn't a semicolon. That was a quotation mark and turns everything into a string and mucks everything up. And then we type out VY equals, instead, in this case, let's say -5. We'll make the spaceship move a bit faster. I'll change the VY value to 5. And I'll just copy these and paste them down underneath. And we'll change the cases to keyboard right. Oops. Make sure they've got to be capital. Keyboard right. There's only one R in right, and in keyboard left. And in that case, we'll change the VX variable to +5 or -5, depending on which direction we want to go in. Save, publish, then press left, and we're going to the left. Press right, and we're going to the right. Up, down, and keep on going like that. But it just keeps on going in that direction, and also I can't, if I've pressed like right already and then I'm just pressing up and down like this, then the spaceship just keeps on going to the right. It doesn't stop going to the right unless I press left, and it stops going to the left. It's never just up and down after we've pressed one of those keys. So in order to get it to stop moving, what we can do is add a new event listener at this time, another keyboard event, but for when we release a key. Stage.add event listener keyboard event. But in this case, instead of key down, what we want is this one, key up. And I'll call this function on key up. My function names are getting awfully predictable. One of these days I'm just going to call them one of the functions Yagalakaluku, just to throw you off. I'm unpredictable like that. Function on key up. And this is a private function as well, as most of them are really getting to, not many public functions. And of course, we need to type in keyboard event, open squiggly brackets, close squiggly brackets, cute little squiggly brackets, aren't they? And here we set Vx equal to 0 and Vy equal to 0 as well. I'm just blindly typing my keyboard. My touch typing isn't nearly as good as I think it is. Publish again, and now I'll press right, and when I let go, it stops moving to the right. And then I press left, and it goes to the left, and then let go, it stops going to the left. Hold up and right, and at the same time it goes up and to the right, press down. Oh, no, it's disappeared. So, oh, wait a second, there it is. There we go. And it's back down. So this is all well and good, but at the moment, when I press left, it's already reached its maximum speed. It's not accelerating, it's not gradually moving up. It's just going to the top speed and then immediately stopping. Whereas in space, it will get to its top speed and then it will just keep on going until we put some force on the opposite direction. So physics-wise, this is not working very well. So what we need to do is give it a little bit more complicated math to give it some acceleration. That's what we'll do next. First of all, what we'll do is go up to the top of it and we'll give it some new variables. Call it private var ax. This is going to be number, and as you're probably guessing, ax means acceleration on the x-axis, and no prizes for what this next one's going to be called, ay. A number also, which means acceleration on the y-axis, and we'll set that equal to 0. Now let's go back down to our switch case statement. And wherever we see Vx and Vy, let's change it to Ax and Ay. I'll quickly go through and do that. And also let's change these values that we set them to. Instead of a big number like 5, we'll set it to a very small number like 0.2. Because when we're dealing with this way of adding acceleration, you really need to use small increments instead of large ones. Also, I forgot to put semicolons in some of these. Sorry about that. You should really do that. If you did that, even when following along with me, good on you. You're becoming a real ActionScript programmer here. And over here in our onKeyUp function, I'm going to set AX equal to 0 instead of VX. So what we're going to do here in our enterFrame function is that every frame is going to have VX plus equals AX. What is plus equals? Plus equals does the exact same thing as if I were to type out something like Vy equals Vy plus AX. It just does it in shorter, just much shorter like this. Just type out plus equals AX and then you don't need to worry about adding VX. So what we could do up here where we've got this dot x and we're adding VX on top of it, we can just change this little modifier here and it will still work. This will work exactly the same. Even if you don't end up using this in your code, if you prefer this way because it's more comfortable, it makes more sense, then that's fine. But as long as you know what it means if you're looking at other people's code, then that's all that matters. If I've done this correctly, and if I test the movie, what I should do is press right, and the spaceship should gradually speed up. Ooh. Ooh, something's happening there. Yes, I'm just adding AX to it instead of AY. That was the problem, sorry. If you spotted that, probably some of you have done it. It's gonna cause an error! Change it! As I often do. Then, good on you. Debug skills. Man, dude. Great. So press right now. It will gradually speed up and it will keep on going even when I press down, let go of the right keyboard button. It will still keep on going. And it will keep on going off the stage, off to the left here unless I counter the velocity of it by pressing the right variable. So this is working nice and realistic now. And feel free to play around with it. So this is working really good. And the reason why the VX value, it remains constant while we're continually adding to the velocity, is that we're not setting it to 0 each time like we are with the AX value. Each time the frame runs again, like the first time it ran, VX may equal 1, and then it will equal 1.2. Next frame, VX will equal 1.2 again, but then we add on top of it another 0.2, and it will equal 1.4. So that's how we're gradually building up the speed and the velocity with the VX and AX values. But although this is cool, this isn't really how we want the spaceship to handle. This isn't really realistic. What we want to happen is that we want the left and right arrow keys, instead of making it go left or right, we want it to rotate the spaceship. And then when we press up, we don't want it to just go up. we want the spaceship to speed up in the angle that the spaceship is pointing in. Because at the moment it looks a little strange when we press left and the spaceship's pointing right and it goes over to the left. It doesn't work very logically. So here's how we go about coding that in our class. To do that, first of all, let's go back up to the top of the code. And over here we've got AX and AY. I'm going to change these variables. I'm going to give them different names. First of all, I'm going to call the first one thrust. And then I'm going to call the second one angle. Don't worry about our AX and AY variables. We'll be seeing them soon. And I'm going to get rid of key down here in our switch case statement. And over here, the case that we press keyboard up, what I'm going to do is set thrust equal to, let me find my keyboard, 0.2. And I'm also going to set booster dot visible equal to true. So if you remember that the booster was that little flame that we had out the back of our rocket which causes Flash to run really, really slowly, but when we publish our movie it doesn't do too badly to our performance. So when we press the keyboard's up arrow key, we're going to have that flame actually appear. And when we press right, what I'm going to do is use the VR variable. We actually haven't got around to using the VR variable yet. We've had it declared for ages, but we're only using it now. And I'm going to set VR equal to +5 when we press right, and I'm going to set VR equal to -5 when we press left. And over in our enter frame, actually on our key up function, first of all, I'll get rid of AX and AY here. I'm going to set VR equal to 0, and I'm going to set thrust equal to 0, and I'm going to set the booster rocket at the end. I'm going to set its visibility back to false. And inside our enter frame function, I'm just going to comment out these two lines with the AX for a while. Next, what I'm going to write out is this dot rotation plus equals, there's the plus equals thing again, evil plus equals, VR. Let's save and publish, and this is written right. Then if I press left, the spaceship rotates to the left, and if I press right, the spaceship rotates to the right. Notice how by default the spaceship is on its right side. According to Flash, the right side, anything on its right side, is 0 degrees, whereas something facing straight up, that's -90 degrees. Something facing straight down is 90 degrees. And if I drew this spaceship lying straight up, well, standing straight up, then this would cause some aesthetic problems in our code for the next things I'm going to write. So make sure when you're doing something like this, when you're taking into consideration some of this next code that I'm going to write, make sure your symbols are always drawn, lying on their right side, like this. Here's what I'm going to write. Angle equals this dot rotation times math.pi. And you're probably already freaking out and saying, this thing is evil, what are you doing? What are you doing here, Tristan? And I'm going to type out a new variable. This variable is only going to be accessible inside this enter frame function because I only defined it inside this enter frame function. It's going to be equal to a number. It's the AX variable, which we've got over here. So hi again, acceleration, how are you doing? And type out math.cosine angle, we need to pass in an angle, times thrust, then we'll define the AY variable, press number equals math.sine angle times thrust. And if I go over here and if I uncomment these two lines, what you'll notice when we publish the movie, when we save and publish, is that this ship works exactly as we want to. We've got that new control style that I was talking about. When we turn the ship to its distinct angle and we press up, the ship accelerates off into that angle. So that's a lot more interactive, but it came with a cost. We had this really complicated 3 lines here. What do these 3 lines mean? This cosine, this pi. Well, let's take a couple of seconds and try to understand these few lines of code. Remember that thing in high school that you sat, nodded and smiled through, hoping the teacher would never ask you a question on? Well, that could be a number of things. But for me, it was trigonometry. Trigonometry is all about triangles and making them very complicated. Unfortunately, it also makes them very useful at the same time. Now, I was considering giving you an overview of trigonometry in general, but really it's such a broad subject that it will deserve its own training series, preferably made by anyone but me. So I'm just going to give you the information that you need to understand what these 3 lines mean. First off, you may be wondering why you need to go through all this pain. Well, here's the Spaceship class as it stands at the moment. We can go up, down, left and right, no problem. And that's because up, down, left and right are amazingly simple. Up is -1 on the y-axis, down is +1. Left is -1 on the x-axis and right is +1. However, now that we are using the arrow keys to rotate the ship, things are not so strictly up and down anymore. If the ship rotates just slightly, the direction we want to travel in is no longer a nice round number. So we need to find new Vx and Vy values that match the new rotation. And the only data we have to work with to get those values is this dot rotation. First, what we do is store this dot rotation in the angle variable we defined at the top of our class. Then we create an acceleration y variable inside the enderframe function. After that, we set the ay variable equal to math.sine. Sine is a trigonometry function. However, for math.sine to do its magic, we need to pass in an angle for it to use. And that would be our angle variable. The sine function then does some sine type calculations. Basically, it creates a triangle out of the angle we passed in, and then it divides 2 of the triangle's sides against each other until it magically spits out the number we need for the velocity on the y-axis. Then we create an acceleration x variable and set it equal to math.cosine and pass in the angle again. The cosine function does the exact same thing as the sine function, except it divides a different side of the triangle, if that means anything. Seeing as the sine and cosine functions will only return a number between 1 and -1, we times the result by the thrust variable, and that will give the spaceship a high speed. And now we have the correct velocity for the x and y axis to match the spaceship's rotation. Well, no, let's do one more thing. When I think of angles, I think of degrees, and I'm sure you do as well, that there are 360 degrees in a circle, 180 degrees in half a circle, and 90 degrees in a quarter of a circle. Flash also works with degrees, and in our code when we used the velocity r variable to change the ship's rotation, that was degrees at work. So naturally you would think that when we pass an angle into the sine and cosine functions that they would accept degrees as well, right? As the previous sentence suggests, things are indeed not that simple. As it so turns out, there is more than one way to measure an angle. Just the same as how Americans use miles and Australians use kilometers, humans use degrees to measure angles, and computers use radians to measure angles. A circle in radians is 6.2832. If that doesn't look familiar to you, then let's try dividing it by 2, 3.1416. If that doesn't look familiar to you, then let's try rounding it a bit, 3.14. And if that doesn't look familiar to you, then how about I just shout, it's pi! If that doesn't sound familiar to you, then try going through school a second time. So, in radians, a circle is 2 pi's. Half a circle is 1 pi. A quarter of a circle is half a pi, and so on and so forth. Personally, I'll take degrees over radians any day, as I'm naturally frightened by pi. Eating pie's not so much, don't get me wrong, I love pie. But using pi in mathematics, wrong. And I'd love to tell you that radians are entirely optional, but they're not. Although this dot rotation runs on degrees, math.sine, cosine, and all other trig functions run on radians. So what we need is a way to convert degrees to radians, and you guessed it, there is such a way. When you start out with degrees, to convert them into radians, you times it by pi divided by 180. Also, as a side note, you can convert radians into degrees by flipping the formula around. Radians times 180 divided by pi. So back when we store the spaceship's rotation in the angle variable, we can use this fancy pudding work to convert the degrees into radians. The upshot being, the code now works. This is the bare minimum you need to know to understand these lines of code. Of course, this isn't the only thing you can do with trigonometry in Flash. Trigonometry can literally open up a whole new world of possibilities. But it's really the only thing I care to teach you. You know what? I'm happy with the Spaceship class now. It does pretty much everything I want it to. For this part, I'm not going to make any more changes to it. The only thing I want to do for the rest of this part is I want to create what's called a document class. A document class is like a class for the whole Flash file. It works just the same as this code that I have here on the main timeline in the actions panel here. See, this code here. It will work just the same as this code. So how do we go about making a document class? Well, first of all, I want you to try on your own. I want you to go and make your own class, try and set up the basic structure by yourself. You can refer back to the Spaceship class if you like, but I want you to try on yourself to start off with, because I'm not always going to be here to help you. Assuming that you've paused the movie and tried that by yourself, first of all, what you do is go to New, and then ActionScript file, and click OK. Then immediately you save the ActionScript file, and I'm going to call this class doc class. And it will put it in the same directory as the Flash file, which is also the same directory that I've put my Spaceship class in there. The first line that we type out is package, the big candy wrapper for our whole class. Then what we should do is import flash.display.movie clip, as that's what we're going to have our class extend in our public class doc class. Make sure it's the same name as your file name, and I'm going to make it extends movie clip, then regular brackets, and then I'll type out my constructor function. Public function, make sure it's got the same name as the class and the same name as the file name, public function dot class, and regular brackets. And what I'm going to do with my constructor function is I'm going to have it pass off to an initiate function, because that's good practice to always have your main code happen inside private functions. If I didn't do that, then the good practice police would come and arrest me or something. So initiate a function, and in our initiate function, what I'm going to do is have this code that I've got here on the main timeline that has to do with all this Spaceship stuff. I'm going to cut it off with Control X or Command X on the Mac. I'm going to go to the document class, and I'm going to paste it in. I'll press this little button here to auto format it up. I'll save, and of course, here's the problem. It's not attached to anything, this class here. How do we attach it to our main document, to our main timeline? Well, I'm going to select nothing to start off with here, and you can see over here in our publish settings, in our properties panel here, it's got a little text box here for class, and in here I'm going to type out doc class, which is going to have the same name as this class here. And if this should all work, because when I press Control Command Enter to publish the movie, I've got the Spaceship right there, and I can do all my interactivity with it. So there you go. In this lesson, we've built 2 classes. How about that? Give yourself a good pat on the back. Well, we learned quite a bit in this lesson. The highlights of what we learned were how to create a basic class, how to import Flash's classes into your own class so that it will understand the ActionScript language, and how to use the private and public access modifiers. In the next part, we'll be creating a class for the boulders, and we'll also learn about extending your own classes.